Hello, everybody. We have a special guest here today joining us at the studio, Drew Tulchin. He is a local legend. He's like the Tolkien, um, just essentially writing what some people thought might have been a fantasy here in New Mexico, but making it a reality in the angel investing and venture capital world. And I'm very excited to have him on today. So, Drew, can you give a little bit of a background about yourself? What brought you here to the New Mexico area, and how you're crafting the vision for New Mexico's entrepreneurial future?
Thanks. I appreciate your introduction. It might be overblown. We'll have to see the ratings review after the end of this. But thanks to you, the work you're doing, and the efforts too in entrepreneurship and beyond. So I get to serve as president of the New Mexico Angels currently. I live in Santa Fe. I've been in New Mexico for 15 years. So by local standards, still a foreigner. And at the New Mexico Angels, we're a 20-year-old organization working to connect angel investors, so early stage investors, with our startups and high growth companies.
So, help you got to break that down in layman's terms for some people too. What does that mean for I guess the three parties here? What does it mean for the entrepreneur? What does it mean for the state? And what does it mean for other businesses here in the area? What does that
Yeah,
mean? That so these pairings, as they all come together, they're all part of this. The many pieces to this puzzle that makes things sing. But how do we get clarity on that picture?
sure. Well, starting with the state, in general, the reputation of the state is that it's not known as an entrepreneurial place. The history and the growth of population here in modern era, at least, is more around military, government, and so forth. But there's actually a study done of entrepreneurship, and New Mexico actually ranks pretty well. So we're not always at the bottom of the rankings, which is kind of the self identity of a lot of people in the state. So the state's doing quite well with entrepreneurship, both in terms of incentives as well as companies that are here and growing. And we would like to see more be more. So the couple of statements that we use, syllogisms, if you will, is we want the village to raise the proverbial child, the child being a startup company, and we want a rising tide to lift all ships. We want bigger boats, and we want more boats on the water here in the desert of entrepreneurship of New Mexico.
So we got these triremes out there.
Mhm.
All these guys are screaming in tandem with the roars. All these entrepreneurs, and they're trying to move through these currents. Is the state itself helping guide these incentives to the entrepreneurs directly, or indirectly through the investors and then over to the entrepreneurs? Or is it a combination of those things?
Yeah, I mean, the state is not some one big thing, right? We're always talking about people. The New Mexico Economic Development Department, NMEDD, is a really good agency. It's got good people who are working from the state on behalf of helping business grow. And there's a lot of good programs that directly help startups that are registered and operate here in our state of New Mexico. So I give them a huge thumbs up. I get emails late at night, I get phone calls on the weekend. So we've got folks who are really being public servants in the truest sense of the word. And they have my thanks as partners and colleagues. There's a couple of specific different programs which people can find, and others are more expert than I. But I do give thumbs up and think that it is a tool that our entrepreneurs can use. And then on the other side, for our entrepreneurs and our startup companies, with COVID, we've had companies that are here and are pivoting to thrive both virtually and in person. And then we've also had some COVID refugees where we've had folks understand that they can now work anywhere and have chosen to place themselves here in New Mexico to be and to have their families and to live, and that's great.
And so, is there any data showing the materialization of these efforts? Have we seen any sort of big wins here that we can actually speak about, where through the efforts of the economic development department, through the New Mexico Angel Investment Network, and through the entrepreneurs, to say that, wow, like, let's look at a couple of these crown jewels. What are some examples we could speak to?
Well, I've only been president of New Mexico Angels this calendar year, so I'm hoping to retain the fresh car smell for as long as possible, or maybe get a little spray so I can revigorate it. This calendar year, we've been fortunate to work with 12 companies. We've had angels write checks and invest directly in these 12 companies for $4 million. And that is about double or triple historically what the New Mexico Angels have done in the startup community from a data perspective. So the historical usual was 4 to 6 companies at about $250,000 a company. So that's $1 million to $1.5 million moved. So feel very fortunate that the Angels have come together in a collective fashion, and that people are writing checks, and that we do have companies and entrepreneurs that are compelling for investors to align with.
Drew, this is Jason. Good to hear you again. I love what you're saying there. So this is double, triple what has normally been, because you know as well as I do, it always goes down to writing the check. So to see something happen like this in a year, and kudos to you and your leadership in accomplishing this. But what are you guys looking at? What is 2022 looking at for NM Angels? What have you been on the radar looking at, seeing, and what are you looking at developing for 2022?
Yeah, thanks, Jason, and a shout out to you for all the good work you're doing and have done on behalf of our New Mexico community as well in the Albuquerque startup scene. We're super excited about 2022. There's a couple things. Let me try to just highlight three. Number one is we are launching a new program called the New Angel Club. And imagine a book club for people who are trying to learn about angel investing. The feedback we get is it's really hard to be an angel because it's not transparent information. So if you've done financial work professionally, you have a leg up, and certainly you're in the milieu or you've been able to experience this stuff. But people who are motivated, who would like to be investing in startup companies, it's a question of where do I start and how do I do it? So we want to demystify that with a group process and learning, and that information is available on our website, nmangels.com/angel club, specifically for the club. So that's number one. Number two is we want to grow our quarterly in-person events bigger and better. We just came back after COVID, as you can imagine. We did an outdoor event. We've worked with great partners like Hotel Andalus, which is a hotel in downtown Albuquerque. Our friends at Electric Playhouse hosted us for us to do food and games at their location in West Albuquerque. And we will be working with some other hotels and other sites. And if you have a location that you'd like to bring 100 to 150 leaders in business in the Albuquerque area or in Santa Fe, we'd welcome it. We're happy to go down to Las Cruces or other places, but we just have a larger volume there. So people can drop me a note, drew@nmangels.com. So the in-person events, we're very excited about, Alexander and Alex and Jason, because this is a chance for people to really meet each other and to network, and for our entrepreneurs to be able to voice and do kind of the proverbial pitch in front of people who can give time, treasure, and talent, meaning they can write checks, but they also might have relationships from a Rolodex perspective, and they might either have other resources or other ways to help our companies get forward. So that's number two. And then number three is we're trying to speed up our response rate. We have 100 companies that have been in touch with us this last year. And to be honest, we're a little overwhelmed because we're a volunteer motivated organization. And so our angels, we're trying to match them as mentors to these companies to give written and verbal feedback so that every company, even if you're not venture ready, can get some feedback to move along on their journey.
Yeah, I think that's inherently helpful because someone just telling you no or no thanks, it doesn't really do much for you. What it's helpful is knowing, well, why? And once you have a why, then that can help you reframe and retune your narratives and maybe make a couple of pivots. And the way I'm looking at this from what I hear is that New Mexico Angels is trying to increase, first of all, awareness. You got to educate people on what it means to get into this realm of investing for what is possible, and really open up new revenue streams for themselves, but also benefit locally, New Mexico as a whole, which needs it. And there's no reason that it shouldn't thrive. And I see that you're trying to bring it right to everybody's doorstep, and getting them together, I think, is important. I mean, it's not terribly difficult to network within the New Mexico community. It's just getting people aware all at the right time to go somewhere and have a conversation, because everyone's pretty willing to have that. And if they can also have those conversations with the entrepreneurs and give them, feedback as to what could be improved throughout that process, if they don't write them a check, I think that, that stands to something quite beneficial in dealing with all the different timelines that every individual person has as an angel within the network, figuring out ways to make it as asynchronous as possible, like you're stating, is going to drive some of the greatest benefit probably that we could see.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you see that. Certainly, we agree, and y'all, both of you, have been around the block, and you've been in this game and know the trials and pitfalls of raising capital. And what I really liked about what you said is, New Mexico. The benefit of New Mexico is that we're a small state. So if we can't do, never mind Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation, but if we can't do 1 degree or 2 degrees of separation to get in touch with somebody who's going to help a company, then I really think we should all go home. So that's number one, is getting access. And then number two is coordinating, orchestrating to have collective action. And the reason why that's important is because 1+1 = 3, and united we stand, divided we fall. And, just you can always break one piece, one twig, one piece of paper. But if you put a bunch of pieces of paper together, suddenly it's a very solid block. And that has a lot of power. And that's what we're working for, and that's what we believe in with other people. And there's many others working on this with us, and so let's all collectively take that step forward.
No, listen, I agree. Why is it that we're so good as farmers out here herding cattle, but we can't herd ourselves to do something important for just for us in the community? You know what I mean? And I think if we can bring these like minds together, if we can have the right incentives in place, the right open channels of communication, the right feedback mechanisms there, we're going to actually watch double, triple, quadruple metric growth on this entrepreneurial community. And every time there's a success, we need to champion that success with them. We need to put that in the local news and have that stuff get picked up rather than people just like force feeding like some sort of ad stream or something of the sort, right? You need all of us to come together with our own network effect and power, which can be collectively quite powerful, and speak about these wins. Because if we can start to bring that attention to it, it not only helps the business, it helps New Mexico, it helps New Mexico Angel Network, and it helps that capital, that quality of life, and those great things that we're creating, really ooze out into the rest of the United States that needs to be aware of the great things happening here in this state. When you
Yeah,
agree,
well
Drew?
said. Yeah, well said. And I think our media folks are helpful. I want to give a shout out, particularly to Business First, Albuquerque Journal, the Santa Fe New Mexican. Les Cruces also has been doing some good reporting, and even the Taos News. So our journalists are receptive. So I think we should give them kudos. I think collectively we all need to make it easier for the message to get around. So I think this podcast can be a tool towards that. And then I want to tell our entrepreneurs to be able to be focused in your communications. One of the elements of entrepreneurship is sometimes we're an explosion of great ideas, and we need a little discipline. Need to build some specific relationships, so be relational, not transactional, and then also be focused in the value of what the company is doing, as well as your own efforts as an entrepreneur.
And so how would you define focus for them? So, you have your product, you have your creativity, but how would you actually articulate the focus so it's super effective and it gives them the maximum amount of payback? What does focus look like to you?
Yeah. So, I raised that point in consideration of media, but let me answer it from a business strategy perspective, because I think that that's going to be more
Right.
powerful, right? I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't have all the answers. I have some things that have worked. I got to be the first CFO at Meow Wolf during our growth period a few years ago. And so I'm very fortunate with that. I got to help Electric Playhouse build with robots, open their doors, and now Parting Stone and a couple of other companies. They're all on our website there under our portfolio. But I think a couple things that feel pertinent or prescient to me right now. One is entrepreneurs, you can't do everything all at once, so don't try. Sometimes I get entrepreneurs that kind of try to bowl us over to impress us, or convince, or so excited about what's happening that they go on and on and on and on. And I think being focused, being clear, and giving me a really short-term goal with a milestone that is achievable and understandable is a very helpful way to focus me in, and also show that your company and that you are focused. So I think that feels valuable, and I don't always see it. The second thing is with our entrepreneurs is less is more. If you're doing a meeting with an investor or with a significant partner, you don't have to talk all the time. You don't have to convince them or sell them. Create a relationship, and in fact, try this sometimes. See how little of the meeting you actually do in the talking, and see what that does to the dynamic of the meeting. So those two things feel helpful in focus, at least in terms of recent experiences that I've had engaging with some of our great entrepreneurs.
No, that's a great point. I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago with a fairly significantly sized multi-billion-dollar family office, and I felt like I didn't say much more than 15 words, only to find out that they said it was a phenomenal meeting and they absolutely loved me and my personality. And I'm not, this is not, has nothing to do with my ego. I was actually surprised with what was going on here because I felt like I had very little input with what was going on. I just succinctly answered a question when it was posed and let the other individual talk and then essentially sell themselves on the idea. If it's good enough, it sells itself, right? So I don't have to keep pushing it all the way through. And I found that the more I shut up and let the person come to terms with what's going on, make them feel like they're a part of the decision, the more beneficial the outcomes tend to be. So I can absolutely agree with what you have to say, Drew.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a PR buddy who did work in Afghanistan a bunch of years ago on the bases, and he had something called the 750-300. And what that
What's
means
that?
is say 7 words, stop, allow the other person to engage on that. Either they say 7 words or they ask a question. Then you say 50 words. And then you only then go into your longer effort, but the longer effort is no more than 300 words. And then you shut up, you stop. And so I think that that's really important. And, I forget it too. Sometimes I get over exuberant or I get excited or I like hearing my own voice. But if we're trying to communicate with others, it's more important what they see and what they're feeling, where they're at. So let's always try to remember that.
Drew, whenever you're seeing the future of investing, and we're seeing here in New Mexico, it's increasing, which is awesome. What are, for those entrepreneurs that are out there, what are investors looking for specifically?
Well, I'm going to give you my personal opinion, right? Because I don't know that I speak for all. I certainly don't. So let me gradate our universe a little bit, right? So we've got some VC firms in New Mexico, and we've got firms outside of New Mexico that come visit us. So if it's a startup, is this a high growth, venture hockey stick type play? And if so, to engage with that community, even if it's small. So that's number one. On the opposite end, we have a lot of great companies doing amazing things that need capital, but they're not on a venture track, and maybe they shouldn't be. And to be honest, they don't have to be pushed that way, but we need to help match them with the right capital, whether that might be FFF, which is Friends, Family, and Fools, which is an early capital, maybe just a few people writing checks. Maybe they need to connect with a bank. Maybe they need our non-bank lenders, which are called CDFIs, or Community Development Financial Institutions. So that's DreamSpring, the New Mexico Loan Fund, West. Those are our 3 most known ones. So that's at the other end of the spectrum, right? People who do need capital, but it's not a venture play. And then in the middle, we've got early stage early stage companies where an angel might be a fit. And so those are folks who have part of the pieces of the puzzle. They may be missing something. They may not be in the marketplace yet. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're pre-revenue. Maybe we're only in beta. Maybe we just took a pivot. And we need to be able to engage with angels and tell a very succinct story that is compelling of what my business is, who I am, and then how I'm going to make money, so that if I write a check as an angel investor, I have a sense of how the money is going to come back to me at the end. Building a great company is wonderful, but if you want money, you got to be able to give money back.
Yeah, and something that I've seen, and I've talked to entrepreneurs, is it's a matter of them understanding it completely. Like, they may have a great idea, when you're asking somebody for money and it's an investment. So, making sure that it's clear in the value that you're giving. I've seen that so many times where people, there's a transaction that's happening and there has to be value given. So how do you give that value to another person instead of just, asking with the scarcity mentality, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So, in terms of what success looks like, which is what I inferred from your question, a team
Hmm.
is important. I want to understand the team. The usual presentations has the team at the end. I want to encourage people to highlight who's doing this, and put that up front. And a lot of times we see solopreneurs, right? Someone with a really strong idea and a strong vision to implement that idea, but they haven't brought other people around them. And so I very much encourage, even if you're very early, get advisors, get in friends, identify the people who are going to be part of that C suite management team and be able to share who those people are. So that's number one. Number two, obviously having a large marketplace, what they call TAM, total addressable market. And in business school, we talk about the pain. What is the pain and what are you solving for? Is it a big pain that's very, very deep and very expensive for a select few people? Is it a general pain that's felt widely throughout the society or a large population of people? And then is your solution a strong amelioration of the pain? Is it only a band aid? What is it? So think about where the pain is, how big it is, and what you're doing as a solution for the total addressable market. And then a product. But when I think say product, not to have you describe the product or service to me, but have you understand how the consumer is absorbing, adopting, or using that product, whether that's B2C, B2B, or B2B2C, right? And so, how is the product embraced or consumed or utilized by the recipients? So, those are the biggest three. There's obviously more to success in a business, but I like to highlight those as easiest ones that a lot of times our entrepreneurs don't quite have the full story on.
Yeah, and for my last question, then I'll hand it over to Alexander. But we're talking about the positive aspects, but what are you seeing when an entrepreneur fails or startup fails? Because it's 90% probably failure rate. What are some of those reasons that you're seeing failures when people come to you? Maybe they've gone to two or three startups. What are some wisdom as you being in that leader that you are in this space? What is some wisdom that you can give to these young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, good question. And you're right. It's probably even higher than 90%, actually, which we don't want to think about. But in American society, where there's a lot of other ways to get a job, entrepreneurship is actually harder in some ways. But some places where I've seen people fall down, certainly not having enough cash at the beginning and jumping out of the gates without enough resources. That's a big one. And whether that's savings because people are going to work for free because they're doing this because they love it, or whether they are so passionate that they start with an early MVP, minimum viable product, and they try to get in the marketplace, or whether they don't have enough money for marketing or packaging or whatever to get the product fully available to customers to have a positive customer experience. So, not having enough cash is certainly a big thing. The thing I mentioned about team in New Mexico, I often feel is a shortcoming, so that we don't understand who's going to be doing it, who's in the boat rowing to see this effort actually make progress and move forward. And don't lie about it. Give me the truth. It's okay if there's vacancies, but have a plan for how to address those vacancies and understand the type of person that's needed and where you're going to find that person. So the team is often a big fall down. And then the third one is probably the gap between the intent of the company and the desires of customers, which is why I mentioned before, not what is your product, but how does the customer embrace your product? And a lot of times people have a great idea for a marketplace, but they haven't actually tested it amongst people who are, or companies or entities that are going to use that product. And so there's a gap between the product offering itself and what people actually want in that type of solution.
No, you're not wrong about that. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Like even on marketplaces specifically, I mean, that's what Turtle does. It's like you got to fill supply first, and then the demand of the people wanting to buy those things. Well, you got to figure out then also what they're going to need. That's this chicken and the egg scenario you play at the same time. And do you have enough capital to play that scenario out? Do you have the team that has the ability to adapt? Not only are they, technically the best experts in what they do, but do they also see the mission and the vision and the value of executing on that properly, regardless of the catalysts or very you know, um, trying things that may occur that may, what I would say, make you feel kind of blah, or like, I don't want to do this. This is too hard. It takes away the joy of it. You got to really having that rock solid team in place, adapting to market pressures and demands is really what makes a lot of this stuff shine. And if you can have also other very patient investors that see the value and want to help support you in that journey, that's a really, really solid winning combination. And I have to agree, it's always been difficult finding the right people to come in, especially at a time of the great resignation. Nobody wants to work. So, how do you get people to take a massive risk where in the United States you're penalized, frankly, for taking that risk, and then say, hey, is it enough for you and your team to join on board to take this pain for, I don't know, maybe 4 years before things start to happen? But then after that, you've overcome really a lot of the obstacles that filter out quality. And are you willing to take that chance, willing to take that risk? And have you found, you don't not only having your own team to operate it, but the people to invest with you, because they're also operators in a sense. Are they willing to take that risk? And throughout the process of doing capital raising, you have to find people that really do align with what the growth curve of your company itself and your team looks like. You have to find that both of these things grow in tandem. Otherwise, one will overstimulate or understimulate, and it's not going to be a winning combination. So it is a little bit of a numbers game too. It's finding all the right personalities to mix and make this thing a success.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and so, and I don't know, I guess that's just how I feel about it from my own personal experience. So if people wanted to find out more about New Mexico Angels, more about yourself, more about these great wins in the state of New Mexico, where would they go to find this stuff?
Yeah, come visit us at nmangels.com, our website. We're also most actively at LinkedIn, where we have a bunch of resources. And we've got an e-newsletter. People can sign up for that, get our monthly information about our trainings, our in-person events, our virtual activities. And we welcome engagement and dialogue and thoughtful discourse.
That's awesome. And last question for you. Is there anyone or group you'd specifically like to thank for the opportunities for where you are now?
Great question. I did want to give a shout out about the ecosystem. Who else is doing good work in New Mexico? And I do want to mention our small business development centers, SBDCs, that are throughout the state. They're a great open door for everyone to come through. And then SCORE is a great resource as well to get some mentors of some gray haired people who've been there, done that. And then I mentioned our three lenders, our community development lenders. And then my buddies down at C&M Ingenuity are doing great work. They've got an office hours that we partner with them every month. So I want to thank all these good people. We're not by ourselves by any stretch of the imagination. We're just one piece in a puzzle. And if everyone can take one step forward, I think we'll all get a lot further, faster. And so I'm very excited about 2021 and looking forward to 2022. There's a lot of great companies out there. So I want to thank our entrepreneurs for their efforts and their dreams. And if we can do something to help move them forward, we're delighted to.
No, it's amazing. Well, listen, Drew, thank you very much for coming on today. I do appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thanks to both of you for your works and looking forward to seeing more Turtle all over the place.
Beautiful. I really appreciate the support.